So I'm Dennis Wright, I'm the Dean of Students at Imperial College. It's a relatively new position. I'm only the second Dean of Students. It was created 5 years ago by the current Pro-Rector for Education. And my specific role for this part of my job, I'm also a professor in life sciences, is student welfare. So I report directly to the Pro-Rector for Education, along with other people who are responsible for the graduate school and for recruitment of admissions. And the line management I have are the college tutors, who I will come back to at the end, who are 4 of those very experienced academics who provide direct support to students, the counselling service, the disability advisory service, which is actually along the corridor up there, and the hall wardens. So I'm, as far as the college is concerned, responsible for the hall warden system, which, as you know, provides accommodation for all Year 1 undergraduates who register by a date and actually require it. And I also work very closely, in particular with the student sabbatical officers. That's the union president and the deputy presidents, in particular for welfare and for education. So we make tremendous use of our elected sabbatical officers. The new union president seems to have been on the desk on the front of the Queen's Tower rooms for the whole morning. He's looking a bit tired at the moment. Commercial services I work very closely with because they actually run the hall system for accommodations, and I'm the chief liaison for the health centre. Unlike some universities, we have an NHS health centre embedded within the college. It's in Princess Gardens, and so I liaise with them and actually hold the college budget for them. Right, so one of the things about welfare support and general advice to students at universities is you have to try and find as many different ways to make that information available, at least to make sure that students know where it is. Because like everything else, you get lots of information when you come to university or before you go and when you arrive. And if you haven't got any issues which relate to any of these areas at the time, you're less likely to remember them. So what we want to try and do is to make sure that there's always a ready way for students to find out where to go, who to see, when that becomes relevant to them, which means as many different ways as possible. And we're still exploring other ways. But if you want to find out instantly from anywhere in the world, the college's student support services, you just click on students on the top bar of our website, and it will then you can see all the various things, including welfare and support, and in a couple of clicks you can be into this range of services. And it's quite extensive, as you can see, and I'm certainly not going to talk about any of them in depth, just one or two of them, in fact. International student support particularly centres on pre-arrival and visas, but is ongoing. There's welcome sessions the week before term starts, specifically aimed at orientating international students. But of course, many students need orientating to London anyway. It's by far the biggest city in the UK. It's on a par. There's only really one other city in the world in the same league in terms of diversity and culture, and that's New York. English language support, very important for many of our international students. Maths support, that might sound odd, but most of our students who are doing relevant subjects come in with very good maths qualifications, but maths support is very important even for across the board. All our subjects are highly numerical, some completely numerical, and going down. So you can see all of those. You can get a video, a very short video online with people explaining what the various services do, like Disability Advisory Service. You'll get to see Mary, who's sitting at the back in red, who's coming to see and just check on what I'm about to say. We give everybody a booklet, which is essentially a credit card sized booklet with all the various services on them, so they can put that away. If you go into a hall, you get it there. We have meetings on the weekend before term starts for students not in halls, for international students. We find as many ways as possible to distribute that. And like all other universities, just about now, we have an app for your mobile device, whatever it is, and well over 90% of our students now have some form of smartphone. It's not 100%, but it must be very, very close now. And that has all sorts of useful things in it. And just what it looks like, you can download that, no problem at all, via iTunes. And various buttons on it, which I won't go through, but there's one for Welcome Week, which supplements all the other materials. So if you don't have any other means of double-checking what you're supposed to be doing, you can look it up there. It's got a pocket guide with all the services that you can need to give you locations, contact details, descriptions, campus maps, a help finder with frequently asked questions broken down into groups, etc., etc. The fun one, in a sort of slightly masochistic way, is the PC availability one, which gives you real-time availability of computers in the library. One of the things Imperial College undoubtedly does to the very highest level is learning resources, and our computing facilities available for our students, nearly all of whom have mobile computers anyway. We have very good computing facilities, especially in the central library, which, like most university libraries these days, is relatively devoid of actual books. I reviewed Warwick University's science faculty in March and didn't realise until I was on the second floor that I hadn't actually seen a book. But ours is pretty similar, as so much stuff is available online, electronic journals, etc. And of course, we're all science, technology, medicine, business. We don't have ancient scripts that might require examination. So that's good. You can go on any time of the day and night and check how many of our students are working in the library by looking at PC availability, but looking at the other way around. And even at 3 in the morning, you'll find that there's quite a lot of computers available. Our library is open 24/7 during term time, except for Friday night to Saturday morning, when it's the cleaners moved in and give it a very deep clean. But otherwise, very good. All universities have one of these. They might call it something different, but actually many of them call it a hub or a super hub. This is actually on the 3rd floor of this building. So you're standing at the back, you're on the 5th floor. I'm actually on the 4th floor, 1 floor down on the other side behind the lifts. You can go and have a look at the student hub. So this is open normal working hours during the week, during term and outside term as well, for students to go. It's a one-stop shop to get all sorts of information they need. So that's very good. We're going to expand that as soon as we can move it to another site and make it a super hub and try and have all of the services available there. So we have disabilities in that same area, counselling, etc. But it's very good. It gets incredibly high student satisfaction ratings. We poll our students every year, get very high response rates, and this does extremely well. The international office has now moved next to that to provide specialist advice for international students. And this is run by Commercial Services, who have a customer service ethos. So one of the things that is particularly praised is the way the hub team deals with students. So it's a very professional outfit indeed, and very good. Now, I'm just going to mention 2 areas specifically in a little bit more depth. This one, disabilities, because it is something that's actually quite important to a subsector of applicants and their parents when they're applying, because the more information that can be provided, the better we can help and smooth the process. So Disability Advisory Service has grown quite considerably. Quite frankly, 6 years ago, the Disability Advisory Service at Imperial was very small. It was not good enough. We've increased it threefold in terms of staff levels since 2009. And we've increased the disclosure rate amongst students to 6.2%. That's 6.2% of our students have disclosed a disability of one kind or another to the college. Now, the national average for a higher education establishment of our type is 7.2%, to give you a comparator. So we're almost at the average. It's very difficult to tell whether we should be at the average or slightly below or slightly more. Nationally, by the way, disability levels for all age groups run at around, I think, between about 17 and 18%, might even be 19%, but it's what it is. And 56% of students who declare, and it might have shifted slightly as the numbers are going up all the time, as we promote the advantages of disclosing disability and destigmatise it as much as we can. But 56% are specific learning differences or difficulties, and by far the most common is dyslexia. And that in itself is interesting because in many parts of the world, specific learning differences are not so recognised as they are in, for example, the United Kingdom or the United States of America. So there's partly an educational issue there. Now, destigmatising is important because if you've got a physical disability, it's fairly obvious. And of course you're going to disclose it. If you've got a chronic condition such as diabetes or Crohn's disease, you may not realise that actually that is classed as a disability, and we will do as much as we can to support that and enhance your learning experience. But the issue really comes to the fore with specific learning differences such as dyslexia or dyspraxia or dyscalculia, number blindness, although we don't tend to get many students with number blindness. And I'm sure you're all aware of famous people who said they struggled at school, everybody said they were thick, etc. Richard Branson being a prime example. I could throw in Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Pierre Curie, and goodness knows how many other famous people. Leonardo, by the way, of course dyslexia wasn't known then, but you can get strong evidence from his writing and also from his phenomenal range of contributions to the arts and science. He was so diverse in his talents, he just had to be dyslexic, because dyslexia confirms many advantages in terms of being able to think holistically, spatially, etc. I've now got involved with quite a lot of work with the Royal College of Art, which of course is only 200 metres away. We have some joint masters with the Royal College of Art, as indeed we do with the Royal College of Music. And at the Royal College of Art, which is postgraduate, between 40 and 50% of their students are dyslexic, because of the advantages, if you like, that neurodiversity confers. So we need to destigmatise it, and we can really help. And we now have, or we will have, once we've recruited the third, 3 disability advisors, including Mary, who provide advice in those areas. And then we have specialist tutors for specific learning differences, and one of them is also an expert in assistive technology, so voice to text, text to voice, all of these things that can help students. We're in the process of installing camera systems in all lecture theatres which will automatically record all lectures. All of these sorts of things will help. We also have a study mentor who specialises in mental health issues and things like Asperger's, autism, spectrum disorder, there to help students study more effectively and develop without being impaired by these differences that they have. So it's important, that's one of the important things, to try and make sure students are aware of this. We also monitor whether or not our processes are transparent and fair, and in fact, there's certainly no evidence to suggest that anybody who declares a disability is in any way suffers during the admission process. I suspect it's slightly higher because there's some degree of self-selection, that the students with disabilities who apply are extremely determined. But there's certainly no evidence to suggest that in any way we're unconsciously, and certainly not consciously, discriminating in any way. And we are currently working with departments to come up with competency standards for all our degree programs. So that's apart from the intellectual requirement to fulfill a degree program's objectives and outcomes, what do you have to be able to do in terms of skills, etc., to qualify for that degree? And in fact, it's for a theoretical degree, such as maths, theoretical physics, or say computing, it's remarkably little. In other words, somebody with very severe disabilities, physical disabilities, etc., can, with assistance, which of course can be provided through carers, complete that degree. Whereas at the other end, there are obvious things that somebody who's qualifying to be a doctor, or maybe in the more applied field-based engineering areas, would require to have a certain degrees of competencies that may rule out some applicants. But it's to try and make this totally transparent, and everybody's working towards that. It's not aimed specifically at people who have a disability. It's aimed at everybody to describe what the core competencies for a degree are. Attainment we also monitor, and there's no evidence that there's a problem there either. Now, the other thing I want to focus on, this is the last slide, is what you might call the coalface of the way we try and support our students, not just in welfare, but in general well-being, in terms of general academic progress. So various members of staff can be described as tutors. It varies slightly between departments, but essentially each student will have an academic who is their personal tutor. So I've just met a couple of mine in between talks, and so you will typically might have 4 or 5 tutees per year. In some departments they might be called academic tutors, but you're there to provide both general academic support, but also pastoral support if required. And there's a requirement that students and tutees and their tutors will meet a certain number of minimum times, but obviously if the system works well, this could be fairly regular. So that's a very important role. And the majority of academic staff fulfill it well. Many fulfill it exceptionally well. And we're working on the group that fulfill it less well. It's a two-way street, and about 10% of our students say that they don't ever feel the need to see a personal tutor. They're very independent, etc. The trouble with that is, that's what you might say initially, and then when you decide you might need advice, it's 2-3 years down the line, and you might not actually feel comfortable in approaching your personal tutor because you can't remember what they look like, they can't remember what you look like. So it's something we want to encourage everybody to do. Our international students tell us that they particularly value personal tutorials. And that's actually really good, because international students have areas where we need to work harder in terms of making sure their English language provision, English language is developing well, that they understand the full nature of disabilities, as I've just mentioned, etc. All sorts of areas. Each department will have a more senior academic called a senior tutor, and they're in charge of the personal tutor system within their department. There's a parallel postgraduate system, but I'm not going to talk about that. And then there are the college tutors who report directly to me, who I appoint as Dean of Students. We have 4 at the moment. They're part-time roles. They may be former senior tutors. In fact, at the moment, one of them is a current senior tutor, and they're there to provide extra departmental advice where a student might want to get a second opinion or may feel more comfortable approaching somebody outside the department because it relates to a particular part of that department. So they're there to provide advice and support, and I have monthly meetings with the college tutors where we discuss things. There's an email you type in college tutor if you've got a serious problem, say, and you want a very rapid response. If you send an email to college tutors, it goes to all of them, and then whoever picks it up first, usually within an hour or so, we're very sad people, somebody will email back to respond, and of course everybody else will know that somebody's responded. So much nicer and more effective than telephone. Of course, students can phone security and all sorts of things as well, but that's the sort of system which we need to make better, but we think works pretty well at the moment. This role isn't that common in British universities. There are vague equivalents. Warwick, which I know very well, has a senior tutor for the whole university, but one person in charge. We have 4 people who fill that role. We have termly lunches for the senior tutors. We have termly lunches for the people who run the degrees. We have termly lunches for various other people. And then there's the hall wardens, which for just over 90%, I think last year it was about 92% of year 1 undergraduates were in halls. The others choose not to be, remember. They may live very close, and I remember I went to one of the accommodation talks this morning, and they said, well, if you live 50 yards away and want to be in a hall, that's fine by us. We have no local living rules to disbar you from hall. But if you live 50 yards away from Imperial, I suspect you might want to live at home because you're probably living in a flat or a house which costs several £1,000,000. But anyway. So about 92% last year, or this current year, living in hall. And the hall warden system, which is there for all undergraduate halls, provides very high levels of pastoral support. So there's a hall warden who's an academic. Some of our hall wardens are lecturers. There's a couple who are professors. And then a big hall will have an assistant warden who will almost certainly be another academic. Halls that are a little bit further away that might not have adjacent halls also have an assistant warden. And then there are sub-wardens who are postgraduate students, PhD students, all selected by interview. I chair the interview panel for all hall wardens and all assistant wardens, and it has a college tutor on. It has the deputy president, one of the deputy presidents from the student union on. So we select these people very carefully indeed. And they run an excellent service, and that's what the student surveys tell us. So very valued additional support. We're working on trying to, and it's very difficult, of course, and you can't provide an equivalent level of support, but we're trying as hard as possible to provide an equivalent, to some extent, support for students not in halls in year 1. So we have functions, we have meetings on the weekend of moving in, which are actually quite well attended for students who are not in halls. And I've had tutees who are not in halls who then maybe decide, to move into London later on. How many people have been to an accommodation talk? Been a few? I don't know, it didn't crop up in the one I heard, that although it's virtually all the students in halls are first-year students, there are several ways an older student can get into hall. there are hall seniors. These are returning students, there's a few in each hall, who are selected by the wardening team as students typically who've been in the hall in year one, who contributed to hall life, maybe a bit more than others, who are keen to stay there, and they act as to improve the social environment in the hall, especially in the first few weeks and months. There's also, you could get elected to be a union sabbatical officer, so the president and the deputy presidents all have a place in hall. And also, vacancies do occur during the year from time to time, and you can put your name down on a waiting list, and if there's too many, we have a lottery system. So there are ways, and a few students go in. Also, students find their way into other halls around here. So there's other halls, not part of the Imperial Hall system, which entrepreneurial students can sometimes find their way into, and we can let them know about those as well. So there's all sorts of ways that students can, some students at least, if they're determined enough, stay in halls.